nothing left to prove. There's nothing I won't do. There's nothing like the pain.
Hey Flames fans, welcome to another special edition of Flames Unfiltered. We are your hosts, Kyle Lewis and Brad Burud, and today we are doing Flames Tough Guys, and there's a lot of them.
There's been some intimidators.
Yeah, of varying degrees, but when you start listing them off and thinking about it, I didn't really realize until we agreed to do this episode just how many there are.
I didn't either. And there's some names when I started doing my looking at this episode that I was like, didn't think of that guy. Totally didn't think of that guy either. The guy I think we think about the most when you say who's the most, I don't know, remembered tough guy for the Calgary Flames, who would you say?
Probably Tim Hunter.
Yep, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
166 fights in Calgary. Is the penalty minute leader at 2,405 minutes. It's a lot.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is absolutely nuts. But in that same era and very shortly after, just thought of another one. There's been so many. But it's kind of hard to categorize because some of them that were also really good hockey players.
Like Gary Roberts could drop the gloves, but I didn't put Jerome McGinley. Yep. I didn't put them on my list because as much as they are tough guys, like that wasn't their job, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's probably the best way to define it. It's like they had a job, especially during the 80s and 90s. It was very clearly a job, and that's the only way these guys were going to take a shift in the NHL. Oh, there's another one actually.
So you know what, Kyle? Well, here begs the question though: will we ever have another tough guy?
No, and I mean, and it's a good thing because for them to be any kind of tough, they have to be able to play hockey. That's the requirement. And a lot of these guys, I mean, with all due respect, not nobody we've mentioned so far necessarily, but a lot of guys that played in the NHL would not be there without their fists. And it's another line too, like Matthew Barnaby, for example. Barnaby could play the game. He's extremely agitating, but it was more predicated on his ability to get under his opponent's skin than to be known as a fighter, right? He could drop the gloves, no problem, but he played his role, and Sean Avery was similar in that respect. Like, it's more than just fighting. It's it's getting people off their game.
It's funny too because like those guys, were like prolific scorers in junior hockey.
Yeah, 100%.
And then it just went into that. Another guy, like, we can talk a little bit more about Tim Hunter in a minute, but another guy like I remember through the years, Sandy McCarthy was a guy that always stood out to me in the 90s. He only had 68 fights with the Flames, but like he
across two stints though, didn't he?
I believe it was 2 stints, yeah. But I remember like the 93-94 year, he had 19 fights that year, and that was the year that he kind of stood out as that guy on the team that was there for his teammates, was in the mix all the time.
Yeah. Actually, my mistake. No, McCarthy played from 93-94 through 97-98. He never returned to Calgary, but he bounced around a lot. I remember him, more so with the New York Rangers, where he had 2 stints at the end of his career. But he was as tough as anybody that ever played for the Flames for sure. And another one that comes to mind, and we will get back to Tim Hunter because he's the big one. But another one from that same era that I think of a lot is Stu Grimson, the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
That's a wild time.
It's funny when you think about like how those guys mentally prepared for that. Do you remember the fighter Reed Lowe?
Oh yeah, very well. Bruin, Ranger, Lightning, I believe.
St. Louis Blues for the most part. I mean, he was that's where he got his start. But I remember he played junior hockey in the town I live in, and he's similar in age to me, maybe a couple years younger than me. But I remember one night we were sitting and shooting the shit. That's what you did, right? I mean, and I hung out with most of those guys, and Reed and I were talking, and he said something about being in the NHL, and I laughed at him. I'm like, Reed, you can't skate, dude. And he just pointed to his fist and he said, "This right here, this is gonna get me to the show." And I just thought, man, I don't know. And he proved me completely wrong. because he had I don't know how many games he had in the NHL. I can look on my handy dandy computer here, but I mean, he had a halfway decent career, and it was just predicated on being there and ready to go, and being able to go up against the Proberts and those guys in the world. And he ended up going on to play 256 NHL games with the Blues and just 6 games with the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
That's crazy. He did it on fighting, and and he put a hell of a show on at a lot of our junior hockey games. And you look at guys in Calgary, and let's go back to the Battle of Alberta heydays and in the mid '80s and the Tim Hunter. Those teams in the '80s and the teams that went in the Cup run didn't just have him that could fight. I mean, they had Gary Roberts, they had Joel Otto, Jim Poplinski was during that time, and I would consider him a Flames tough guy too, because he had 103 fights in his days in Calgary, and it's just a totally different era than what we have now, right?
Well, at the time, a lot of the really good players, apart from guys like Wayne Gretzky, of course, they had to be able to fight if it was necessary. Doug Gilmour would be another one, for example.
Yep.
But now fighting you don't need that skill at all, right? It's less prevalent than it's ever been. Although this past season we seem to have a fair amount. But to your point about the '80s Oilers and Flames, Mark Spector has a pretty good book called The Battle of Alberta. It's a little biased towards the Oilers, as you would expect from Mark Spector, but overall it's a pretty interesting take on an absolute insane rivalry that I wasn't fortunate enough to grow up during its heyday, but having watched the videos and read about it, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, and you wonder now, like we had a glimpse of it in the previous years here, of the Battle of Alberta being back, and the fun that ensued with the Kachuk and Cassian ordeals and things like that. But and then of course the goalie fight too. I'll never forget that night. But
Talbot and Smith.
Yeah, that's probably what we'll get from now on, will be those isolated incidents like that. I don't know that we'll ever have the Battle of Alberta where it's just mitts off, like we got in the early '80s. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a good thing, right? I don't know. I pray though that we don't ever lose fighting in hockey. I'm not a big. I guess here's the way I look at it. Fighting's a part of the game. I hate stage fights. I hate anything to do with that. But I'll tell you what, if me and you are battling in front of the net and sticks get up and gloves go off, that's hockey, right? And I would hate to see that not be part of the game.
Well, the stage part of it's taken over a large portion of fighting in hockey, and that's I share the same qualm with it that you do. Time and place kind of thing. I don't want to see fighting in every game. I don't want to see anybody get hurt in a fight, of course. But it's nothing like it used to be. I mean, looking at these names and thinking about like who like the last fighter would have been with Calgary is kind of an interesting discussion. So for the purposes of this, because we could talk for days about a lot of these players, I'm just going to list off a few. One that just came to mind because of their recent playoff flop is Craig Berube. And he was at the center of that brawl between the Ducks and Flames in 2001, which if you haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube because it's wild.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, it's on there. I watched it a few weeks ago. It is on there. So yeah, Craig Berube certainly comes to mind. Kevin Westgarth and Brian McGrattan.
Yep.
I'll share some thoughts from the other side as a result of my conversations with Zach Cassian on a future episode about that night with Tortor, because Cassian was with the Canucks that night, right? In terms of what was going on in the dressing room with Tortorella. But so those two guys, McGrattan and Westgarth, were probably two of the last ones for sure. Eric Goddard as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him. He was a big time heavyweight. Andre Waugh, who was also in the tournament I just played in. Christoph Oliva of the 2004 playoff run fame.
We won't forget him.
No, the Polish Hammer. And I mean, I don't I think he just played the one season in Calgary, didn't he? Not even the full season. Yeah, I think he was acquired around the deadline, and that was it. We're gonna have to look that up now because that's gonna drive me crazy. Yeah, I mentioned Andre Waugh. Perfect. Who else? There's some defensemen too that were like tough, hard nosed, like Robin Regier, who was an excellent defenseman, but very, very tough. Bob Bugner, Denny Gauthier, of course. Yeah, there's been a whack of them.
Christoph Olawa played 65 games with the Flames.
That's it.
247 minutes. So he played that 1 year. You're missing a couple that I don't blame you for this, but you remember Tim Jackman?
Yeah.
He threw down some good ones in Calgary.
He had a good season too, of like 10 or 15 goals or something 1 year, I remember.
Another one that he was a smaller guy but fought a lot was Ronnie Stern.
Yes. Yeah, Ronnie Stern was very tough. Darren McCarty. People forget he played 2 seasons in Calgary.
Willie Platt. That's
going
back to the 80 season.
Corey Sarich, the late great Chris Simon.
You mentioned something just a second ago, and I wanted to expand off of it just a little bit. You said the last Flames tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
So who do you think the last Flames tough guy was?
See, those years after 08-09 when the Flames missed the playoffs for those 6 years, I feel like it happened during that time period where they kind of phased out. And it's hard for me to pinpoint exactly who it was, but I'm going to go ahead and say it was probably Brian McGrattan. Goddard would be right there too. And forgive me if I'm forgetting somebody, because it is kind of a convoluted thing to point out.
So to expand on that, like Milan Lucic, you didn't consider him a fighter?
Oh, he could fight for sure, and he was tough as nails, but he was also skilled enough that, you know, he could take a regular shift. He didn't fight every game, but I mean, he fought enough. You could definitely make the argument it was Lucic, but I'm talking more of like a pure, all they do is fight. Not a net front presence in the power play. Doesn't take a regular shift.
Probably McGrattan.
Yeah.
Probably the last one.
Yeah. What was his last season? And he's actually involved in player development with the Flames now.
13-14, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. And that timeline makes sense to me because it was right around then that I'm not sure who the last real tough guy in the league would have been, but there was kind of a the guys like Derek Bugard, like there was in the 2000s there was a real resurgence, it feels like, in tough guys. And then towards, the 2010s is when it really kind of fizzled out.
Yeah. And now, I mean, when I look around the league right now, Tom Wilson, tough as nails, but look at what he puts up for points. I mean,
it's wild.
That's the things. I mean, that's what we're going to see right now. And that's what we're going to see from now on is like right now, depth wins, and you can't have that guy on your roster that just doesn't get any minutes other than to go out there and fight. So,
yeah. And actually McGrattan played 8 games in 14-15 with the Flames. So I really think he's the last one you would classify as a true tough guy only kind of thing. Interesting. What a list of names.
I remember Chris Simon. I know you mentioned him earlier too. He was another one of those guys that would go out and battle, and he, I remember him from some of those key years too, as a player that was out there doing that, doing the tough stuff.
Oh yeah, we don't get to the Cup Finals without him in 2004. He was a huge part of that team.
We forget that when you look at the 2004. I mean, we had Olawa and Simon.
Yeah. And we had,
I mean,
that was a really tough team. Billy Niemanen was driving everybody crazy.
I love that.
Dave Lowry, he could hit too, and he could if he had to.
I mean, that was a physical, tough team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild, man, to go through some of these names, like, and people that you just, with all due respect to them, you kind of forget. Not like Andre Waugh, for example, just played the one season in Calgary, but a really, really tough guy.
All-time penalty minutes leaders for the Flames. Tim Hunter leads that by a mile over Gary Roberts, and then Joel Otto's up there, and that's another guy that could throw the fist. Jim Poplinski, Theo Fleury's 5th, Ronnie Stern is 6th, Willie Plett is 7th, Al McInnes 8th, Suter 9, and Aginla 10.
Yeah.
We should look up how many fights Aginla had. He had probably, when you think about, you mentioned the 0-1 Anaheim Ducks situation. What is the most, you think about historical fights in Flames history.
Yeah.
I mean, the Aginla Lecavalier fight is it, right?
Yep. Absolutely. There's nothing else can touch that.
The Kachuk Cassian fight, although Kachuk didn't really fight. I guess I don't even know. I couldn't put that on a list because there wasn't really a fight there. Well, I take that back. There was a fight. It came later though. That wasn't the fight though.
I know, but I have to show that. So Cassian signed this for us. Is too funny. Like, what a great picture.
It is.
Just had enough of Kachuk.
But they did, and Kachuk did stand up and did fight him. So that'll be one that we will always remember. We'll always remember the Smith Talbot one we just talked about.
Monahan, Nugent Hopkins.
Oh, I remember that now that you say that.
Yeah.
Holy crap. That was one of those we never thought we'd see, right?
Oh, not a chance. And for the record, Aginla had 72 career fights. It's quite a few.
That's a lot. I mean, when you think about it, okay, he had 72. That's probably not just in Calgary. But, I mean, when you look at, Sandy McCarthy had 68 with the Flames.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, Aginla in Colorado, Boston, Pittsburgh, and LA.
Yeah.
I'm sure he had 50 plus fights as a Flame. He had to have.
Had.
Yeah.
Those are the key years, right?
Yeah. So who was your favorite of those tough guys? It doesn't have to be like Tim Hunter because he was really impactful. Like, name me a more obscure one that really, clicked with you.
Like, boy, that's tough.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, if you considered Gary Roberts a tough guy, that's my favorite, but I don't consider him a tough guy. When I look at pure fighter guys, I don't know. Tim Jackman, maybe.
Yeah, Jackman was good. I'm going to go off the board wildly here as probably the most popular St. John Flame of all time, Rocky Thompson.
Oh, how many? We've talked about him before on the show.
Yeah, I think he's still with the Florida organization. If I'm not mistaken.
How did he not make our obscure Flames favorites?
Because he was just so here and gone, kind of.
Yeah. How long did he play in Calgary? I mean, how many games? I can look that up here.
It's actually from Calgary. I didn't know that. He was assistant coach with the Oilers. He was head coach of Chicago Wolves. He was with the Flyers most recently, but he was in Calgary.
He played 15 games.
15, yeah.
Holy cow! 2 stints, 15 games. He was
61 penalty minutes in 12 games and 25 penalty minutes in 3 games the following season.
Oh boy!
So in 27 games in St. John in 98-99, he had 108. 99-2000 had 125 and only 53 games. Like, this guy's just insane.
So does this tell you something about the Flames draft history? He was a 3rd round pick. Ugh.
Yeah.
The Flames drafting in the 90s so could be a show of its own.
Well, that's going to be a show where we drink the entire time. That's for sure. And you can't say much about the 2000s either.
No, you really can't.
No, we never. This team never started drafting well until about 2013, 14. From like 1990 onwards. It's unbelievable to think about.
So, who is your favorite?
Yeah, that's a tough one too. I did really like Craig Berube as a Flame. He wasn't there long, but he was really, really tough. Yeah, I'd say go with him.
One of the things that's difficult when you're talking about tough guys, and we bring the question up about like who's your favorite. It's difficult because tough guys shuffle around so much. Like, when you look at this list, all of them had short Flames careers outside of Hunter, who played 11 years. All of them were short-lived, right? And it's tough to build a favorite when they're there for 2 years or 1 year, or you know what I mean?
Well, that was kind of unique to the Flames too, and some other teams as well. But I mean, guys like Bob Probert, playing in Chicago so long, like that kind of went by the wayside. And Hunter's a good example too. One of the last guys to really stick around for a long time. And I think it's just the nature of teams feeling they need to get tougher and trying to acquire these guys. Yeah, I mean, they always, it's like, yeah, we need to go and get this guy. Well, at the time, I don't want to say they were a dime a dozen because that kind of undervalues what they did at a time when that was an important part of the game, but there was a lot of them around, right?
Yep, there was. And you know, another thing too is they were a cheap price tag too, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But even like, like Ty Domi, like in Winnipeg and in Toronto, um, super, super tough player, but he had some pretty lengthy stints, which was by that point, especially was not common, right? These guys bounced around a lot. It was 1 or 2 seasons. And that's what made their job so tough is that I think above any other role, they had to, like what you said about Reed Lowe, had to really fight, for their meal ticket. And it was never a long-term relationship, right?
Which is really, I mean, it was the career path that probably allowed them to play in the National Hockey League.
Oh, for sure.
Think about the physical abuse, but think about the mental abuse. And I watched numerous documentaries on different things with Flames tough guys, or not Flames tough guys, with NHL tough guys, and like the thought process, a game day thought process for them had to be mentally challenging.
Oh, and a lot of them have talked about it and then the way that coaches would treat them. And I mean, Scott Parker's been pretty outspoken about it with his time in Colorado under Bob Hartley. And then you can get into the truth of those things or leave them be. But the reality is a lot of coaches, that's the way the game was, right? They rode their tough guys into the ground. And a lot of them have expressed they were, they didn't care. They'd fight if they had to fight. Other guys were terrified of fighting, even though you would never know that when you saw them on the ice.
I know.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable, and unfortunately, like, a lot of them are no longer with us because of that lifestyle. One whom we should really mention as well, who now that I think it was actually one of my favorites as well, was Wade Belak. Yes. One of the more forgotten pieces in the Robin Regeer Theo Fleury trade.
Yeah,
he was a tough man, and he was a really good friend of Michael Landsberg on Off the Record on TSN. Due to their respective mental health challenges, and he kind of became a champion for that cause up until the time he passed a few years ago.
Yeah, he was a forgotten piece of that deal.
Yeah, spent some time in Toronto as well, where a lot of people remember from that time as well. But these guys, I mean, again, like it was the most. I wouldn't say it was the most thankless job, but I think it was the most difficult job in hockey because the only way these guys were going to make it was, based on their knuckles, right?
Yeah. I think, it'd be fun to talk to some other players. Like it'd be fun to talk and get the perspective of what some of the superstars of the league thought of the tough guys and how important they thought they were, because I would venture to bet that some of the elite players in the league lived and died for the tough guys and were super thankful for what the protection they gave them, right? Because we're talking about a totally different era in the 80s where if you had a star, you had to have a tough guy.
Or if, like the case of the Oilers, you had several to protect Gretzky, right? I mean, you had a very, very tough player, Mark Messier, and then you had Dave Brown, Semenko, McSorley. Like he was surrounded by toughness, and it's funny to think McDavid does so much now. Just imagine if anybody tried to throw a hit on him in that era had he played.
Yeah. It's funny too, though, when you look at the stars of the 80s compared to the stars of nowadays. Like McDavid is a big guy compared to speaking to like Gretzky and stuff. So it's funny how the size of the league has changed, right? And the speed of the league has changed. And
it's great, especially the speed element. I mean, a lot of these guys used to have beers in the dressing room, smoke cigarettes. Like Nikolai Habibulin, as you likely recall, being a fan of his, would pound cigarettes and coffee between periods. I mean, these guys are such well-conditioned athletes now. In the 70s and part of the 80s, they're all rocking dad bods. So it's pretty unbelievable to think about.
It is. All right. Well, thanks for joining Kyle and I on another special episode. It was fun talking about the tough guys and giving them the thanks that they probably deserve through that era. That was that's some tough hockey and some tough careers for these guys. And the Flames had a number of tough guys that we have not forgotten, right?
Yeah, and we're not likely to. And I mean, I'm sure there's some names that got left off this list that others, feel free to post that, tweet us, and tell us who they were or why you like them. Because there's, man, like I said, there's a lot. Just making a quick list, I'm like, oh man, I forgot about half these guys. It's crazy.
With the short careers like that, it's we went through a lot of them, and it's tough. So yeah, please fire us out. We always like input from the listeners. We're hoping you're enjoying this off season and enjoying the summer, and we're back every week talking Flames hockey. Enjoy your summer, and we'll see you next week, Flames fans.
See you then.
Thanks for listening to Flames Unfiltered with Brad Burud and Kyle Lewis, your source for unfiltered Calgary Flames hockey talk. Keep it locked on flamesunfiltered.ca. Subscribe where you get all your podcasts to never miss an episode. Flames hockey talk every week, presented by Inside Edge Hockey Media Group.
Yesterday, I crawled to you and I said all the things that you said to say. Have I said enough? Do you like it? Yeah, yeah. Do you like it? Yeah, yeah. I know you play these dirty games. They're killing me, and I know that you love to watch me beg. So here I am. Do you like it? Yeah. For begging, I hate myself for staying. I hate myself for listening to you. It's too little, too late. I can't escape, so I'm begging you, please. I changed all the things that you told me to change.